Wait a little, and then we will start. Okay, dear colleagues, dear students, nice to meet you again. And right now we will continue our topic. We'll talk about Russia, Russian role in transformation of the New World Order within the historical context. And last time we talked about the appearance of the Russian statehood, the appearance of the ideas of autocracy, and some historical main lines of development, mainstreams of the development of Russian civilization. And we finished last time by the time of troubles. It means it was the critical period when even Russian statehood was in danger. And the time of troubles was a unique time. It was 15 years only, when two dynasties changed. The Rurikid dynasty has been replaced by the new one, by Romanov dynasty. And Poland had lost its chance to conquer Russia. And maybe the current relations between Russia and Poland are also determined by this historical background, historical memory. So, if speaking about the appearance of Romanov dynasty at throne, first, of course, Romanovs, they faced a problem of legitimacy because it was new dynasty, young dynasty, and they needed to get more recognition, more support from the side of the people as well as from the side of elites. That's why they have to undertake an effective and moderate internal policy, the reformation of the country, as well as at the same time they have also to be very active on the international area. And in the middle of the 17th century, Romanovs faced again the Poland in the battle for Ukraine. So the question when Ukraine joined to Russia, so it happened in the middle of the 17th century. You remember that previously all these lands were the part of the medieval Russian states, but in the time of the Mongol yoke, playing the political instability, Poland and Lithuanian Commonwealth, they captured these lands, and for 400 years approximately, Kiev and other lands were under the influence of Poland. But in the middle of the 17th century, this region faced the problems of religion, because the people living in the area were Orthodox, as well as the Polish elites were mostly Catholic, and they started to propagate the Catholicism in Ukraine, as well as to prosecute the people being Orthodox. And the next reason was also economic reason, because of course this region was considered like a resource area for the Polish kingdom. So that's why the local people uprised. And the leader was Bogdan Khmelnytsky. You can see him on the picture. So Bogdan Khmelnytsky started the war for independence, but of course the potential of the Ukrainian territory and the potential of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth were unmeasured. They were completely different. And Bogdan Khmelnytsky soon understood that he will need some kind of support from the neighbor states. But really, I thought Ukraine was surrounded by different countries, like Crimean Khanate, for example. At the same time, Bogdan Khmelnytsky had no choice, and the Ukrainian delegation came to Russia to the Tsar Alexis the Pacific, the second Romanov at throne, and asked to help them. Of course, for Russia, it was a big choice, a big dilemma, because the situation was not so stable. It was the time of riots, of internal mutinies, and Romanovs hesitated to start a new war. That's why they convoked the People's Assembly, asking if Russia should start this war or not. And the Ukrainian delegation, of course, insisted. They talked about the common language, common history, common traditions, and the common future. So finally, Russian people accepted. And 14 years, Russia led the war for Ukraine. In general, it was successful for Russia. It joined the right bank Ukraine, the eastern part, including Kiev. So Kiev joined to Russia, and it happened in 1667. So, but even after that, Russia led 2 more wars with Poland again and with Ukraine to preserve all these territories. Since this time, Ukraine became an integral part of Russia. It was just like the restoration of the lands of the Kievan Rus. For example, here on the map, you can see the rose territories were the territories previously captured by Russia resulting this conflict. And not only Ukraine, for example, part of Ukraine, but also such part of Russia as Smolensk. But of course, the main territorial expansion and maybe the appearance of Russia like an empire happened under Peter the Great. So, of course, in Russia we have different points of view over this emperor, because, for example, as you know, he was blamed by the Russian church like Antichrist during his reign, because his anti-clerical position, because pro-European position. At the same time, Peter also is criticized because of sometimes the cruel way of acting. At the same time, we can understand that really he achieved the goals which predicted for Russia the leadership on Eurasian area. The main tasks, the main geopolitical goals of Peter the Great was to get an access to the seas. Because Russia thought it was, as you see on the map, the biggest country in Europe. It has access only to the Caspian Sea, which was really limited and well connected with Iran only. Next, Russia has also access to the White Sea on the north, where the navigation was only 3 miles per year. So that's why Russia cannot get access to foreign trade, to technologies, to foreign goods. That's why, not to become a colony, Peter the Great established like the first task to get access to the Black Sea, like the second task to get access to the Baltic Sea on the north, and like the last task to get access to the Caspian Sea to establish more control. So, step by step, he started to realize his geopolitical agenda. First, he led a successful war against Turkey and built the Russian war fleet on the Black Sea. So Russia didn't join Crimea this time, but Russia fixed its positions on the Black Sea region. Encouraged by this success, Peter was trying to build a coalition and to get access to the Baltic Sea. This time, Baltic Sea was controlled by the Kingdom of Sweden. So Sweden was the most powerful state in continental Europe. This time, it's not like Sweden of today. They controlled Norway, Finland, the territory of Baltic states, some part of Poland, and even Germany. Of course, Russia was not ready to oppose alone, and Peter sent the so-called Grand Embassy. It was a unique diplomatic mission which lasted approximately 2 years, and the main task was to form the coalition against Sweden. Tsar also joined this mission, but incognito, under the name Peter Mikhailov. And it was also some kind of achievement because it was the longest absence of the ruler in the country. So he left Russia for more than 1 year. Peter attended different countries, acquired some professional experience, for example, in shipbuilding, and at the same time led some diplomatic conversation, and finally formed the coalition, which was called the Northern League. The coalition started the war, but of course most of the wartime passed in Russia, and Russia became the most active member of this coalition. The result, so here, this is, you may see, it was the Grand Embassy of Peter. So, of course, Russia within this coalition had some defeats as well as victories. And finally, Russia strengthened its positions on the Baltic Sea region. It was founded St. Petersburg this time, and within this war, next the capital was replaced to this city. And finally, after 20 years of war in Nystadt on the territory of modern Finland, it was signed an agreement. In accordance to this agreement, Russia has got not only Ingria, it was the area of St. Petersburg and Karelia, but also Estland and Livland. This is the territory of modern Estonia and Latvia. And we have a very interesting precedent, which can affect also the modern history. For example, you see that Baltic states within the European Union are very often speaking about the occupation by Russia, historical occupation. But sorry, Russia had conquered these lands from Sweden. And to avoid any territorial claims, Russia proposed to Sweden to pay for this territory for all the people living on this territory, as well as even for all the animals, including wild animals, also staying on this territory. And Sweden accepted. So it means that Russia not only conquered, but Russia also has bought this territory. And of course, within the context of historical memory, historical events, right now Russia can put a claim against Baltic states, asking them to refund the money with the commissions that Russia has paid to Sweden to acquire these territories. So, after the victory in the Great Northern War, the Russian statehood has been transformed. Peter the Great promulgated the appearance of an empire. He transformed the Tsardom of Russia into the empire. And the European countries accepted because Russia became the most powerful state in continental Europe. Unfortunately, after the great of Peter, it happened the time of the palace revolutions, the time of dynasty instability in Russia. Within 40 years, 7 emperors succeeded the throne. Finally, the Empress Elizabeth, a legal daughter of Peter the Great, established some kind of stability. Elizabeth can choose the favorites, and among them there were a lot of talented people. One of them, Michael Lomonosov, in 1755, founded the first public university in Moscow, which is now Lomonosov State University. But, you know, if speaking about the history of higher education in Russia, really, Lomonosov University was not the first university of what right now it's positioned like this. Because in the time of Peter the Great, it was founded the Greek Latin Slavonic Academy. It was like a university, but not the classical one, mostly like religious university, because there were only 2 faculties, the faculty of philosophy and faculty of theology. In the end of the reign of Peter the Great, it appeared also the academic university in St. Petersburg, which is now St. Petersburg State University. But this university was like a PhD department within the St. Petersburg Academy of Science. So, and the Lomonosov University, or Moscow State University, became the first classical, it means educational, university in Russia. So, the time of the palace revolutions ended by a very interesting event in European history. It was the 7 Years' War, the war of different coalition for the world leadership. This time Russia united with France and Austria and fought against Prussia and England. So finally Russia had won the military activities. Russia had won at the battlefield, but Russia had lost diplomatically, because in the end of the war, the Empress Elizabeth died, and her successor, young Peter III, was a proponent of the Prussian King Frederick the Great. So that's why he left all the territories that Russia captured before. Such acts provoked the misogyny of the gentry, of the aristocrats in Russia, and they supported Catherine II, to replace her husband at throne. Of course, the time of Catherine the Great is well known because of her internal reforms, and mostly because of her successful foreign policy. So, you can see on the map the territory of Russia this time. Russia started to penetrate the North Caucasus. In 1764, Russia joined the Aleut Islands and founded first settlements in America, in Alaska. Of course, Russia focuses its attention on the Black Sea region, especially on Crimea, Crimean Peninsula. Finally, Russia will lead 2 wars to capture Crimea, And it happened in 1783. So Crimea was taken from Turkey. Russia also took part in the partitions, 3 partitions of Poland, and after that, Poland disappeared like a state. And the Polish statehood was restored only in the beginning of the 20th century. So here, for example, you can see the title list of the manifesto about joining Crimea. So here, the Catherine's time was the time of glorious victories, and you can see the generals and admirals being at Catherine's time. Pyotr Rumyantsev, Alexei Orlov, Fyodor Ushakov, and of course Alexander Suvorov, which is the most prominent Russian general. And Grigory Potemkin, Potemkin of Crimea, Catherine's favorite and general and field marshal, who joined Crimea to Russia and built the Black Sea war fleet. So you see, the joining of Crimea was not so peaceful. If making some parallels with the restoring of Crimea, reunification of Crimea to Russian Federation, so of course the situation is very similar. For example, when Potemkin joined Crimea in Europe, they started to talk about Russian tyranny, about the people of Crimea suffering within the Russian Empire. So, and Grigory Potemkin proposed to show how the life in Crimea was improving within the Russian guidance. And Catherine II organized like a trip. She invited the representatives of different countries, the ambassadors, the delegates, and even Austrian emperor joined the delegation incognito. So Catherine showed the new built villages, the new built fleet, so as well as all dynamics and improvements happening in Crimea. Of course, not all Europeans can accept this, and they started to talk about Potemkin's villages, like place decorations. However, it's not true, but it's a sample of the black PR. After joining Crimea in 2014, we have met the similar situation. But maybe you know the backgrounds and some reasons of the conflict of 2014. And the key point is that planning the turnover in Ukraine, the United States also planned to remove the military sea base of Russia from Crimea somewhere else and to establish the NATO base in Crimea in order to control the whole Black Sea region. So, for joining Crimea, Russia had crushed all plans of NATO. After that, Ukraine lost its geostrategical significance and was considered only like buffer state, like a part of the belt of instability to detain Russian growth. Here you may see on the map the partition of Poland. So, resulting 3 partitions, Poland disappeared like a state, and Russia joined the Western Ukraine and Belarus. So that's why right now, when speaking about Eastern European countries, It's one of the reasons why Poland is the most pro-American country. It's also the consequence of the historical memory that previously Poland had lost a chance to be the leading state at Slavonic lands. Next, Poland left the second chance to conquer Moscow during the time of troubles. And finally, the third time, Russia took part in the partition of Poland and the disappearance of Poland like a state in the end of the 18th century. Of course, Napoleonic Wars. At the beginning of the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte was trying to unite Europe. And he really succeeded to build a European empire. This empire, which united most of the Western European countries, can coexist with Russian Empire. But it happened the campaign of 1812, and until now, the historians let some disputes whatever happened with Europe, with European history, if Napoleonic France and Russia coexisted peacefully. But we have the fact that French army invaded Russia, reached Moscow, and even was trying to destroy the city. So many monuments were destroyed. But next, Russia had won the campaign, and Napoleon had lost 500,000 people and had to retreat. The second point, which was very important, if Russia will stay or it will continue its activities, it will prosecute Napoleon in Europe. For example, Russian commander-in-chief Michael Kutuzov was pro-peaceful coexistence, as well as the Emperor Alexander would like to liberate Europe from Napoleon. So, of course, the emperor's will became the principle, and Russia maybe had lost the chance to be the leading power in Europe one more time. So, the result was the abdication of Napoleon and the Congress of Vienna, which established the Vienna system of international relations. It was a good time, and it was the first attempt to globalize the world. Alexander, who was very idealistic, the Russian emperor, he proposed a draft of the so-called Holy League. It was like the predecessor of the United Nations. For example, all the states should help each other. And Alexander even proposed to establish the duty-free regime and free trade for everybody. And he even did this in Russia. Of course, the European countries welcomed this initiative, but didn't do the same as their own countries. As a result, Russia soon fell in economic crisis. So it means that too liberal policy is also very dangerous. Of course, after its victory in Napoleonic Wars, Russian Empire remained to be the superpower within the whole first half of the 19th century. And even some attempts to undermine the supremacy of Russia were broken. For example, here you can see the eastern vector of Russian policy, the intrusion of Russia in the Balkan Peninsula and in Caucasus, facing Iran and Turkey. Sometimes Russia faced resistance, even at the level of plottery, For example, in Iran, the British intelligence organized the unrests and the fanatic people entered Russian embassy and killed 28 Russian diplomats. Among them was the ambassador Alexander Griboyedov, who was not only diplomat but also famous Russian poet and writer. So, of course, Iranian government would like to stop the conflict, to avoid the new war. And for example, they granted a diamond, Shah, to refund the life of Griboyedov. Right now, this diamond is kept in the Museum of Kremlin, in the diamond's chamber. Of course, next, in the middle of the 19th century, it happened the Crimean War, which undermined Russian supremacy. And the situation was quite similar, like we are facing today. Because this conflict initially was started like standard Russo-Turkish war. We were predicted result. So we have right now the conflict in Ukraine, which is also just so clear. Speaking about the current situation. But next, when Russia was ready to win, the coalition of European states interfered the conflict and landed Crimea. That's why this war was called Crimean War. So, Russia had lost this war, and the main city of Crimea, Sebastopol, was captured after 2 years of the siege. But the European countries, like now, also had no more resources to continue the military activities. That's why both parties find it a compromise. It was signed the Treaty of Paris. Of course, Russia is losing part, had lost, for example, the Black Sea battle fleet and was discredited in general. But European countries also cannot protect the ambitions they planned when starting the war. After that, Russia refocused on Balkans as well as Central Asia. For example, on Balkans, Russia helped to Balkan people to get independence, especially Bulgaria and Serbia. So, since this time, the Balkan factor of Russian policy is a specific one. On the one hand, within the field of geopolitics, it's not a priority. But at the same time, Bulgarians and Serbians are, for us, like brother nations. And until now, Russia pay special attention to this region, despite of current situation. For example, if speaking about Serbia and, for example, Bosnia and Herzegovina, they remain to be two countries in Europe which are not in the list of the non-friendly countries. So the rest of the Europe is in this list. Of course, Russia also penetrated the Central Asia, mostly playing the factor of science and geography. First, they will organize some geographical expedition of the Russian National Geographic Society. And you know that right now this Russian Geographic Society was restored and they are doing some serious missions worldwide, including South America. For example, as I know, recently they have explored the valley of Amazonka. So, and after the geographical expeditions, the armies arrived to this region, and they joined the so-called Turkestan region, which is now Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan. Of course, Russian politics in Americas. First settlements in America appeared under Catherine II, and next Russia removed its expansion and founded the settlements in California and even for a short time in Hawaii Islands. But in the second half of the 19th century, due to the long communications and infrastructural problems, Russia sold out all these territories, and I remember last time I talked to you about the details. And until now, the Alaska's future is not determined. You know, there is a pro-Russian party in Alaska, and sometimes they are voting to return back to Russia. Of course, it's a kind of speculations, because after such initiatives, they will get some extra financement to regional budget. But in every case, some Russian communities, Russian traditions are still preserved in this region. So Russia also entered the Far East and joined the Far Eastern region, as well as Kuril Islands, which is now the disputed territory with Japan. So Russia led even some wars with Japan for the leadership in the Far East. But as well as the first revolution happened in Russia in 1905, Russia had to finish this war without glory and even losing some territories. So it means that the factor of revolution was played and is played until now. But it was just like an overview towards the global conflict, and the first global conflict was the First World War. Like today's situation in Ukraine, it was provoked in some small region in the Balkans, and by all fighting countries, it was considered like a short-term conflict. But in general, the war lasted 4 years, and it was ended by the point of view of geopolitics, by the demolition of the 4 empires: German Empire, Turkish Empire, Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and Russian Empire. In Russia, it happened a revolution. The first revolution was the liberal revolution in February, and the liberal government and military elites enforced the Emperor Nicholas II to abdicate. However, the liberal elites were incapable to rule. They became like most of the elites right now, so populist, but at the same time ineffective. So that's why, to save the country, to stabilize the situation, in October 1917, the Bolsheviks seized the power. But as well as the result of the people's voting within the Constituent Assembly didn't provide the leadership for the Bolsheviks, they were placed the second only. They organized the turnover and usurped the power again. And such usurpation provoked the civil war in Russia, when the country was divided in two camps. The Reds, it means pro-Bolshevik forces, and Whites, so the rest. Right now, for example, the result was that approximately 4 million people migrated, they left Russia. And right now, for example, we have the very similar process. It means we have the massive migration, the people who didn't support the activity of our authorities, they prefer to leave the country, and they're trying to make some parallels with the migrants, like white officers, yes, of the White Army. But of course, there is a difference, and maybe it will be the future topics of future PhD research to compare such migration processes. But even right now, even for Russia, it's so sophisticated, so difficult. So I think we can make the first estimations of such processes only within 3 or 4 years. And of course, but the most notable result was the appearance of the Soviet Union. Soviet Union was created like a confederation, like the integration of independent Soviet Republic. And the activity, the experience of multinational construction has been examined by different political entities. And for example, when building European Union, they shared a lot from the Soviet experience. So, you see, Soviet Union included 15 Soviet republics. And it faced many difficult problems, such as full international isolation. So, for example, the Soviet country was, the young Soviet country was even in more hardworking situation like Russia is right now, because Soviet diplomats had to surpass the diplomatic boycott of the world leading powers. One by one they did. And the logic was the similar, like we are facing right now within the sanctions. For example, the sample of the North American United States. The North American United States was the last country which recognized Soviet Union politically. But American businessmen were the first who came to Soviet Union. And for example, Henry Ford and Arnold Hammer were named even in the United States like red capitalists. As for Great Britain, as for France, we are facing the similar situation. The business missions came the first, and 2 and 3 years later, the diplomatic recognition happened. So, for example, if speaking about the current situation with the sanctions, so the most active country in Europe in sanctioning policies is Great Britain. But this year, more than 200 companies from Great Britain were fined, were amended due to the violation of the sanctions introduced by the Great Britain itself. So it means, although the sanctions, the British companies continued to cooperate with Russia, as well as all other European countries. So the peak situation happened before the Second World War. Right now, we have many attempts in Western science trying to rewrite the history, to reformate the historical memory. For example, they are very often speaking that Soviet Union and Germany acted together, they divided Europe, they both aggressors. Sorry, it's not true, because the main proof, which is very often given, this is the so-called Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the agreement when Russia and Germany agreed to divide Europe into two parts. But sorry, Soviet Union was the last country which signed such agreement. The similar agreements were signed by Germany with Finland, Sweden, Poland, Great Britain, France, etc. But when Adolf Hitler has started the First World War, Russia can protect its own national interests. For example, Russia, Soviet Union has joined the Baltic states, and here you may see on the picture the parade of Baltic people willing to join to the Soviet Union. Right now, they are speaking about the occupation, despite of the long-term coexistence within the common state, within the Russian Empire, next within the Soviet Union. But how to join the Baltic lands? It's very easy. They are so practical. So it means they would like to orient to the prosperous model. And that time, all these three countries were mostly agrarian countries. And for them, the growing and industrial Soviet Union was an attractive model. Many people migrated for working to the Soviet Union, as well as when finally it was proposed by the local socialist government to organize the referendum, the majority of the people, of course, accepted to join. The similar situation happened also with Finland. For example, in Finland, you may see on the map, Finland was a part of Russian Empire, and it became independent country only after the October Revolution. So it means in 1918. And the territory which Finland has got was the administrative territory of the Finnish governorate within the Russian Empire. It means the borderline was not so far from Leningrad, and Leningrad was the second city of the Soviet Union and the first industrial center. So that's why Joseph Stalin decided to remove the border, and the Russo-Finnish War happened. After that, after this defeat and the second defeat during the Second World War, Finland proclaimed its neutrality, especially neutrality in relations with Soviet Union, I mean non-aggressive policy. You know that this year Finland cancelled this political mainstream and joined NATO. So it means that really Finland will meet some problems in relations with Russia. Right now, this is the migration problems, you know, but in future it will be just the more systematic problems in different spheres. For example, right now, Finland has to increase its expenses for military industries and weapons. It's not because of Russia, but this is the obligation of the Finnish government towards the United States, for example. But finally, Russia will be accused in doing this. So, but, you know, sometimes it happened the time. And it's a part of our historical memory too, when the countries can act together. Here you may see three leaders: Joseph Stalin, President Roosevelt, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill. sitting in Yalta, sitting together. You can see the land lease. It means the weapons and goods and resources supply provided by America and Great Britain to the Soviet Union during the war. So it means that only together we had won this conflict. Of course, Soviet Union was the most active participant, even to compare the distances and the scale of military activities as well as the scale of the losses. But right now, within the rewriting of the historical memory, the United States were trying to focus their attention that the allies, it means Great Britain and the United States, maybe a little bit France, had won Hitler, and Soviet Union was just only a statist. So it means standard participant in this conflict. What was the important consequence of the Second World War? It was established the system of international relations, which is Yalta-Potsdam system. And such system existed until 2014. The system with international institutes such as United Nations. The system with some financial tools like American dollar. The system of international law principle of some diplomatic traditions and policy. But after 2014, all principles of this system were broken. So it means that right now we are living in the transformation of the new system of international relations. And I think it could be considered not Ukrainian, but Crimean system of international relations, because the referendum in Crimea changed everything. Of course, the United Nations, like an institute, and the International Tribunal in The Hague, in Netherlands. So, the second event, which was also very important, in the end of the war, the Americans bombed Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, nuclear weapons and non-proliferation. Right now, if you will organize some kind of primaries requiring people who attacked Japan, most of them will tell that it was Soviet Union, but not the Americans. Of course, the next time was a little bit stable because it was the time of the Cold War, the time of the balance of power and two superpowers. So you see the combination, the appearance of NATO, the Soviet Union. Since the beginning, Russia and Soviet Union were for the peaceful coexistence. For example, Soviet Union proposed to create a special buffer zone just to avoid any kind of the conflict. But the Americans refused, and next, one by one, they destroyed the buffer zone composed of Eastern and Central European countries, joining them to NATO one by one. So here you may see also the PRO system. This is the so-called Star Wars project, the satellites, the missiles. But such system in every case became very expensive and ineffective. The critical problem which happened with Soviet Union was the internal conflict between the elites and two leaders, Michael Gorbachev, who was too liberal and too weak, and Boris Yeltsin, who was active and ambitious, faced in the end of 1991. Despite the willings of the population, so within the referendum, more than 87% voted to preserve Soviet Union, the disintegration happened. The local leaders signed the agreement and it appeared independent Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. So it was an illegal act. And as I know right now, it's the process to examine the legal status of this procedure, of the disappearance and dismissal of the Soviet Union. Most probably it was out of law. So, but it appeared, instead of the one Soviet Union, it appeared 15 independent states. Of course, it was undertaken an attempt to unite them, to create some kind of the Commonwealth of independent states, like an international organization, but although this integration is still existing, it's not so clear if this organization is efficient or not. But the problem was that when Soviet Union disappeared, all its allies became betrayed. For example, Soviet army left Afghanistan and the Mujahideen has got the power. As a feedback for Mujahideen drug traffic, it appeared Taliban. When Taliban radicalized, so we have the current Taliban in Afghanistan. In Romania, within just pure democratic procedures, some leaders like Nicolae Ceausescu were executed. And you see in the picture, Nicolae Ceausescu, the former leader of Romania, and his wife are killed. So they destroyed the Berlin Wall. It was like a signal for freedom. But right now, this is the touristic seaside and no more freedom in Germany. Russia always was told that Cold War ended and there were no conflicts, there were no winners. It was win-win strategy. But here on the slide, you can see the Congress Medal for the victory in the Cold War, given to American intelligence officers and some army officers. Here on the picture, you may see this is the signature of the agreement about the dismissal of the Soviet Union. It happened in Belarus. The result, many conflicts on the post-Soviet area. And until now, it's like a mine. We have such frozen conflicts. And the Americans right now are trying to use all of them to destabilize the situation and maybe to chantage Russia, to frame the Russian economic growth. Of course, it was even a risk to disappear like a state, especially when some regions started to proclaim their independence. And of course, the most notable conflict, internal conflict of Russia was the war in Chechnya. And if Russia completely failed the first Chechen war under Boris Yeltsin, it was logical because Russian business invested in this war and was not interested in the victory. They needed some kind of offshore on Russian territory. So the second Chechen war was won by Russia under Vladimir Putin. You see, the terrorist attacks happened on Russian territory in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, in some other Russian cities. And for Russia to stop, to finish this war in Chechnya was like the question of survival, to stop the terroristic fears. So, finally, Vladimir Putin proposed a decision. He appointed Ramzan Kadyrov, who is one of the Chechen national leaders, to the position of the head of the Republic of Chechnya. And right now, he appointed Ahmad Kadyrov, yes. And right now, his son, Ramzan Kadyrov, is leading Chechnya. For example, the Chechen terrorists, like they were during the first Chechen war, and you can see here Khattab. He was from Jordan. He was sponsored by the Qatar. So, but the mind of Russia, the illusions of Russia completely changed in 1999. When it happened, the war in Serbia, the Kosovo crisis. So, if Russia previously considered Western countries like allies, when they saw the situation in Serbia, they understood that Russia also can enter the following scenario and became a target for NATO. After that, Russia was trying to protect the national interests. And for example, here on the map, you can see Vladimir Putin when he was prime minister. And of course, you may see also Russian military vehicles going to Serbia to protect Kosovo. You know, it highly increased Russian reputation and showed that Russia is still independent actor. So, however, Russia continued to develop within the mainstream of the Western civilization under the control of the Western countries, even when the power changed. Just the 31 of December 1999, the President Boris Yeltsin announced about his dismissal, and the new one became Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin founded the political party Единство, which is, initially it was called Medved, the bear, so which is now the United Russia, the leading pro-governmental party. Of course, initially, Russia was trying to build good relations with all European countries, to build the common architecture of security, to build pipelines, to provide the energy security for Europe, to modernize the infrastructure and the chain of supplies. Russia entered different organizations, rankings, Bologna process, but everything changed after the Crimea. To Russia, it was shown that it's not a plenipotentiary, it's not an equal partner, but it's a country which should obey whatever the Americans will say. After that, Russia started to build an alternative infrastructure of international organizations and security. It appeared BRICS, which is now BRICS Plus. You know that 6 new countries, even 6, including Argentina, joined to this organization. Russia has created Eurasian Economic Union. Russia was among the initiators of Shanghai Organization of Cooperation. Russia is supporting the Chinese infrastructure initiative, the New Silk Road, so it means one belt, one road. Of course, such alternatives are removing Russia out of the control of Anglo-Saxon countries. And like the last attempt, they initiated the conflict in Ukraine. So, but as you see, the current situation, we have still some options for the further discussions. So, I think the conflict in Ukraine will not be long-term and will finish soon. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer all your questions. Any questions?
The presentation. Last conference we have some questions, but I don't know if our colleague can generate some questions, please. Yes, 1 second, please, to give you permission.
Yes. Jerome?
You can talk now.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jerome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You're welcome.
My question is, what do you think if Napoleon he think more his decisions after going to Russia, like he arrived, many people die, but if he think better his decisions, you think that in those years Russia can be like Belgium? I'm referring that will be a part of Russia that also speaks French and Russian.
It was a very specific time. For example, previously, Napoleon acted together with Russia trying to conquer India. You know this case.
Yeah.
And they have all chances to succeed because Russian troops were sent. And for example, England had no foot army to protect India because the ground fleet controlled the seaways, but not the Eurasian territory. So Great Britain changed power in Russia. After that, they killed the emperor, organized the assassination. Okay, and they broke the union with Napoleon. As for Napoleon, when he came to Russia, maybe you've read Tolstoy, War and Peace. And most of Russian elites, they were French-speaking elites. And France, and especially Napoleon, were very popular in Russia, among Russian aristocrats. But such foreign invasion finally united people and became them more patriotic. That's why, for example, in France, this conflict is called Russian campaign. But in Russia, it's called Patriotic War of 1812. But soon the Patriotic War ended, and it happened in the border when Russia has met a dilemma to continue the campaign or to stop the war and to ally with Napoleon. So, in Russian interests, national interests, was to stop the war. But inspired by ambitions of young Emperor Alexander, inspired by some European diplomats too, finally Russia continued this war and lost even more soldiers than during the Patriotic War. But you know, in history, sometimes we have the situation and we have only one way where to move. So it means Russia had choice, Russia had chosen, and right now we have such reality. For example, in conflict in Ukraine, we have the similar situation. In 2014, I mean, Russia joined Crimea, but Russia didn't join Donbass, Donetsk and Lugansk. Although Russia had such chance, and even the new Ukrainian elites were ready to give these territories. But Russia was afraid to provoke sanctions, to provoke political crisis, and maybe European conflict, military conflict, I mean. That's why Russia stopped, only Crimea. But you see, right now, it was a mistake of Russia, because otherwise maybe we can avoid the current conflict if Russia decided to do this in 2014. When talking about Russian elites, Ukrainian elites, sometimes they're speaking that everything was ready maybe to finish the conflict in 2014 by the diplomatic way. But it's the question that Russia decided to act by another way. That's why we are facing the situation we have right now. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes. Maria?
Yes, I see the question in chat about recovering Alaska. So I have already talked about this. First of all, Russia sold Alaska because of infrastructural problems. Yes, right now, of course, we have some challenges in the field of waste communications, but they are not so critical like they were in the 19th century when the boats should spend 2 or 3 months to reach Alaska from St. Petersburg. So, if speaking about Alaska, I think not yet. Why? Because I mentioned last time the answer of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin told that, for example, the people of Alaska, of course, are the former people of the Russian Empire and our compatriots. But if Russia would like to get Alaska back, Putin answered that Alaska is our ice cream. So it means that most probably no, but if people of Alaska will desire, okay, we can consider, we can examine this issue. For example, it's a ridiculous fact, yes, but many people in Europe pass through the polls. Which president is the ideal president for their countries? And even the people of France, of Germany, of Italy, they voted for Vladimir Putin. So it means that, okay, Vladimir Putin in Russia is considered like an evil leader by some European politicians. But for example, if he was European national politics, he had all chances to win the national elections in each country. I think this is the current problem of the elites' succession, because the generation of well-educated, polite, and strong leaders Such the generation is in process to disappear, and the new generation is coming. They are mostly more creative, but not so stable. Okay. Maria Serrano, can you switch on the microphone?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. I see the icons
Yes.
on the back.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much. I enjoyed a lot your conference. And well, my question is, considering all the historic aspects that are being mirrored nowadays, do you think it's possible for a new world order, a multipolar world order, to to being born in not such a long time term?
You know, it will be multiple in every case. Why? Because the concept of the New World Order was proposed by the Americans, especially by Henry Kissinger, who died yesterday. So,
Yeah.
and it was the world under the leadership of America. And after the crash of the Soviet Union, America has got the unique chance to be a leader. But they became incapable to play this role. So that's why right now we have no even the choice. So the sample of the Europe, I mean, the case when part of the world, the prosperous part, is falling under the American influence, and as a result, they destroy the economy, they destroyed the social landscape, and maybe due to the American factor and the instability which was provoked by the crises, right now the future of the Europe is unclear, because Europe became also like a victim of such policies. So within such situation, Russia, for example, can propose some alternative. China can propose some alternative. Maybe some countries which could be active and brave can also propose some initiative. For example, you have a format of BRICS countries, yes? Initially, BRICS was just like a project, really not stable, with some problems between even member states, for example, between China and India. But we can deal. We can find a compromise in different spheres, and we can focus on the areas of the mutual interest, not only the formal agenda. But for example, COVID situation, I mean, pandemics inspired BRICS activities because we acted together to surpass the consequences and to meet the challenges. So we are united, we are trying to harmonize the economies, to coordinate the politics within the respect of the interests of all participants. So it means that by this way, Russia is proposing some kind of alternative based on traditional values, on respect of the partners, on some business interests instead of the politics, and maybe, of course, on some culture and sport out of the politics too. Because speaking about soft power and smart power, of course, soft power is better, but we are living in the time when smart power should be. So it means we should not only share our values and ideas, but we should also protect our values and ideas, otherwise they will disappear. For example, if speaking about BRICS right now, there are approximately 30 countries willing to enter BRICS plus. But Russia and other member states are waiting, because the question is, for what? What do you want entering BRICS? What do you expect? Because the idea is not to collect the members. Otherwise, it will be the second model of the United Nations. No.
Yes.
Okay. So it means we are for the productive cooperation in all spheres.
Thank you very much.
Yes, some chat messages. BlackRock. But you know, yes, for example, if speaking about the global economy, yes, but we have some small difference. Because, you know, globalization was started, and we cannot finish the globalization right now. But globalization, the global processes, global economies, were transformed into the so-called glocalization. So it means we have globalization and localization at the same time. We have the gold billion, for example, on one hand. We have China and pro-Chinese economic zone. We have the area controlled by Russia within Eurasian Economic Union. So in Latin America, for example, I'm not sure, but I think within the Monroe Doctrine, Latin American countries, most of them are under the control of the United States. This is the evidence. But Latin American countries can generate some kind of alternative, because when you have a choice, when you are flexible, you can compete. So it's about the economy and globalization. Some more questions? Sergio?
Well, hello there. I would like to ask you for your personal opinion. You were talking about Bogdan Khmelnytsky, right?
Yes.
They say that they, how can I put it? They wanted the help of Russia to become, well, they were attacking the Poland, and they had some problem with the Crimeans.
No. Really, if speaking about Bogdan Khmelnytsky, initially, his first idea was to revenge. So to let the personal vengeance because some Polish aristocrat killed his family. But soon his personal activities was considered like a struggle for independence. But for independence of what part? Of the Orthodox part of Poland, which was Ukraine. So, but when Bogdan Khmelnytsky had won Poland several times in some battles, when he invaded even the Polish territory, he understood, of course, that the Polish potential, military potential, will not permit to Ukraine to win. And in this case, if Ukraine will not find an ally, it will be a question of the survival of all Orthodox people living in Poland. So, and in Poland, this time, they live not only Ukrainians, but also Belarusians, for example. And in Poland, they were called dissidents and mistreated, despite the agreement previously signed with the Grand Duchy of Lithuania to protect the Orthodox religion and to give the same rights. So, and after that, Bogdan Khmelnytsky sent an embassy to Russian Tsar And of course, they negotiated, and finally Tsar even has gotten approval of referendum to start the war. But when the war lasted, Bogdan Khmelnytsky even was trying to deal with Poland again. So it means that the history is really so complicated. So he started to deal also with Poland, but he died. So he died himself. So until now, we do not know if he has been killed or not, but he died. And after that, the next leader was agreed to communicate only with Russia. And that's why Ukraine joined to Russian territory.
Well, I was thinking maybe there can be some kind of paper document that can maybe credit for the place that today. Well,
Yes, no. So it was the referendum. So it means, for example, Ukraine was not a separate state. They were just the lands within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And the delegates, the people from these lands, they organized also some kind of referendum in Pereyaslavl. It was Pereyaslavskaya Rada. And they authorized the delegates to come to Moscow and to deal with Moscow, and as final term, to propose that these lands will join from Poland to Russia if Russia will be able to protect these territories. Yes, it's fixed.
oh, okay. So there must
And of course, it was not the territory of modern Ukraine. For example, wait a bit, I will try to show the presentation. No, presentation again. Yeah, here, for example. Do you see the map?
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, for example, only the Rose territories were joined to Russia. And for example, here as green territories, you can see Sumy, Chuguev, Izium. So maybe I will show, yeah, I can show. Or not. Yes. For example, here you may see Izium. Right now, it's in the territory of Ukraine. Here you may see Sumy, also in Ukraine. Here you may see Putivl, also in Ukraine. But at the same time, all these territories, which are now Ukrainian, were part of Poland. Some territories part of Turkey this time. So it means that Ukraine, like current territory, didn't exist.
Now I see.
Yes, and Ukraine within its territorial borders appeared only under Bolsheviks. But it's a paradox because right now, in accordance with Ukrainian law, they are trying to deny everything given by Bolsheviks. So it means they are denying the Ukrainian statehood. Because the Bolsheviks created Ukraine within its current territories.
Exactly. Well, that was pretty, yeah. Thank you. It was pretty informative. Enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yes, as for Roland Garcia, yes, you are right. And I talked also that it's really not a reality if Alaska will join to Russia. But there are also some issues which are not clear because, for example, this is the agreement. I mean, legal document about the transfer of Alaska to the United States. You know the history I told about that Alaska was sold to the United States for $7,200,000. But this money in full were not paid to Russia. And we do not know until now if Alaska was given to the United States forever, or, for example, like long-term renting for 100 or 200 years. Why? Because there were two original documents of this. One copy for the United States, and the second copy for Russia, for Russian Empire. And next it was kept by the Soviet Union. But when Soviet Union disappeared, the Americans has got influence to enter the archives of Russia. And the original hard copy, the second copy of the agreement about Alaska transfer, was given to the United States and disappeared. So right now, Russia didn't possess the second copy of the original document about Alaska transfer. Why do Americans needed this document? So it's a question. So if Mexico will join the BRICS group, it's up to Mexico. We have the open membership, so welcome to apply. And the question is for what also? What benefits will Mexico obtain from joining BRICS and other BRICS members from joining Mexico? So, if speaking about the relations of Russians when colonizing Alaska, for example, initially, really, they were a few Russian population. But except Cossacks, Russia led active missionary activity in Alaska. And many local people became Orthodox Christians. So for Russia, the nationality was not a marker of identity. There were two markers of identity, language and religion. And if the local people of Alaska became Orthodox and started to speak Russian, they became Russian nationals. It's easy. The similar situation happened in California, in Fort Ross, where approximately 80% of the people were local people, but they were considered to be Russian nationals. And please pay attention that Russia officially had no colonies. So it means that all the territories within the Russian Empire had the equal status, except some privileges given to certain territories like Finland, for example, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, etc. It means that the people living in Alaska and California benefited the same rights and privileges like most people of the Russian Empire. And until now, the sample is that, for example, Alaska was joined by the United States in 1861, but until now, there are some people preserving Russian traditions who would like to undermine the Russian ancestry. Sorry, but we can understand if this is a historical mistake only when done. So it means we cannot predict if our current acts will be a mistake or not, because we are living in the time of multi-actors, for example, and the current historical process depends not only on activities of the Russian government, but also on the activities of other actors, not only the governments, but also NGOs, some organizations, and even just the people within shuttle diplomacy. About Russian language and the global status of Russian language. First of all, Russian language is the official language of the United Nations, 1 out of 6. Russian language is spoken mostly on the territory of post-Soviet countries. And in order to expand Russian language, of course, Russia should be a prosperous and attractive country, because we cannot enforce you and somebody to learn Russian if you don't want. If you desire, we will. But sometimes it's not only a simple desire, it should be just a need to learn Russian, to be successful, to make business, to establish contracts with Russia, to get some benefits, to communicate with people. So, for example, when the conflict happened, I mean 2022, February, everybody predicted that Russian language will disappear, that Russia will be blocked, Russian language will be unpopular, and in some countries, especially in European countries, they started to cancel Russian language classes, to remove Russian writers, poets, etc. from literature, to limit Russian music, etc. But here in Russia, we are facing another situation. The number of students coming from abroad and willing to learn Russian and to study in Russian increased. And for example, right now at the level of our university, we have to limit the intake because we are unable to admit all of applicants who would like to enter the university. And I contacted my colleagues in other Russian universities. The situation is similar. I attended the Facebook communities, and the number of, as well as salaries and popularity of teachers of Russian language as foreign language increased too. So it means it's like the feedback effect, and the presence of Russian language and its expansion is growing. So how has Russia's position in the system of international relations affects its economy? You know, right now Russia is the leading country by the number of sanctions introduced against it's more than 20,000 different kinds of sanctions, personal, system, industrial, etc. Indirect sanctions. But at the same time, Russian economy can mobilize and is showing a growth this year. So it means, of course, we are facing some economic problems, but they are not so critical like in some countries which are introduced the sanctions against Russia. For example, in my here in my life, I do not meet the sanctions. except at the level of some goods branding, and that's all. What's the relationship of the Russian government with the Romanov family? Do they participate in political life? What's the reparation that has been given to the death of the Romanov family? So, first of all, of course, Romanov family exists, but they are not recognized, but like official authorities or even political figures. So it means the affairs which are happening within Romanov family are the family affairs. As for the Russian government, of course, Russian government can contact Romanovs, and sometimes they will organize some official visits of the representatives of Romanov family, but it doesn't affect Russian politics and political life. We do not think about the restoration of the monarchy, and especially of the monarchy under Romanov family. As for the reparations, no reparations were given. To whom should they be given? As I know, within the Romanov family right now there is just one uncontestable leader or head of the family. Some people pretended to be, but right now they are a little bit disunited. Okay, some more questions? No more questions?
Yes, there's no more questions, but we want to say thank you to you, Dr. Konstantin. It was a really important conference. So, oh, there is one more? No.
No.
So, thank you very much to be with us today.
Okay, thank you for everybody. I hope we will meet in some ALAR events, or maybe in person in the university or somewhere else in the conferences. For example, next week I'll be in Serbia, and welcome to the University of Belgrade also to meet together. So, and I wish you good activities to learn Russian, of course, and Happy New Year, I think.
Yes. Happy New Year. Goodbye. Thank you to everyone.